Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, my friends, the podcast about all nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. That's Blake. I'm Will, and today we're here to talk some Critical Role. But before we jump into the usual festivities, you guys know the drill by now. A little bit of couple quick announcements, a little coffee talk, except no actual coffee, at least from me today. I don't know if you are holding the banner for us or not.
We're out of coffee.
You hate
We
to
are
see
out
it.
of coffee. Yep.
You hate to see it. But yeah, not too much to talk about though, actually. Just the standard stuff. Discord, you should join it. Wizard the Witch and the Wild One. New episode dropped yesterday. So that's fun. Probably I imagine though we probably won't be talking about that till next week. Have you listened to it yet?
I have.
I haven't finished it, but I did start it.
Yeah.
Longer one again.
Nice little 2-hour,
Yeah.
2-hour chunk. Which
Yeah.
I'm all about.
So you guys know the drill by now. Get into Worlds Beyond Number if you haven't already, because it's fantastic. But other than that, is there anything else? Were we doing our weekly stream this week?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be Friday. Same time, same place. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all I
Same
got,
place.
unless you got anything to add.
I was just saying, same place on the YouTubes.
Yeah.
So unless you're listening to the podcast. So anyway. Well, without further ado, we like to get into it with a little bit of a recap where we like to talk about what happened in the latest episode. We try to boil down 4 or 5 hours into a neat and tidy 10 to 15 minute recap. And then we cut that out as a separate video and put it up on YouTube. So if you're watching just the recap, click the link and join us in our full deep dive discussion.
Do it.
And I get the amazing gift of, for this 5-hour episode, my half was really the first, I think it was like 80 minutes or so. And then Will got the joy of the rest of it. So having said that, we have the Mighty Nine essentially working their way through the citadel of the Weave Mind, trying to locate the Weave Mind themselves. And they have really, Matt's sort of describing like a series of like hallways they're going down. In fact, there's points where they have like a decision they can either go up or down. And Matt even mentions like voices from like a different hallway, which the party's like, maybe we shouldn't get ourselves into more combat. There's also the sounds of combat happening as the rebellion is in full swing, fighting in this citadel, essentially on other floors. One point of interest that they come across is this door that is like this massive, huge door that they peek inside, and there is some kind of essentially creation of the Weave Mind in the sense of this creature that has it's basically a tentacle monster, has all these appendages. It's this massive floating beast in the center of the room. It immediately sees them and begins to head towards them, but we have I think it was a telekinesis from Caleb, and even I think some opposing roles that happened here, where essentially they're able to slam the door shut. I think Yasha gets up against the door as well to try to hold it shut, and this creature's basically like with all of its tentacles, like trying to ping, 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 like get through this massive door. But fortunately, they're able to make it through, or make it keep it from getting through, and then make their way around it. Essentially, the next big chamber they get themselves to is actually the Weave Mind chamber. They walk into this room with these large green crystals that are just surrounding the room, and Ford is actually one of the first ones in, and immediately encounters one of the Weave Mind members. And the Weave Mind essentially sort of implies like there's some opportunity to chat. Like maybe we could talk about this a little bit. But in true D&D fashion, they're like, nah, we're good. Let's just kill him. And I don't remember if it was my half or your half when there's the far step from Ford, but essentially there is some mental shenanigans that are happening that Ford is fortunately rolling well against, and basically does a far step to position himself for combat And I think that is when we go to our break. You want to take it from there?
Yeah. So we cut to break early, basically, and the next like 4 hours of this episode is essentially a combat session. So you were joking that I had the worst half here, but honestly, since we just hit the highlights, we're just gonna go through the main big swings of this fight. But it was incredibly epic. And yeah, Blake's right. Ford kind of jumps in first with this far step, and he actually has see invisibility on.
Right.
So we come to find out that the Weave Mind are all invisible. So Ford is like the only one that can actually see them, at least at first. And basically, we have all of the rest, or excuse me, most of the rest of the Mighty Nine follow in behind Ford. And Matt brings out this gorgeous map. Jealous as always of what he puts together with, like Blake mentioned, these big crystals made out of ruidian glass. There's this like ruidian glass archway that looks really cool, and the cast is hooting and hollering over it. Definitely final boss vibes with this map. So Ford is the only one that can see the Weave Mind, and we roll initiative. And like I said, we're just gonna hit the highlights here, but lots of cool details unfold as this encounter goes. So I'm gonna describe them, but they probably aren't gonna be in chronological order, so don't hate me. Because there's lots of cool layer actions in here. We find out some cool abilities about the Weave Mind, and specifically, there are 5 of them, and we find out that 2 of them are known as ego hunters, 2 of them are known as mind manipulators, and one of them is known as a sense render. So I guess that's probably like closest akin to like their class in terms of like what Matt's building there, and not like their literal names or anything. Um, but anyway, so we get into combat, and at the start of this, like Blake mentioned, the Weave Mind are kind of trying to have a conversation with the Mighty Nine, but Bo and the rest of them aren't really having it, and they're just not really, willing to parlay, and we just basically get into it. But one of the things they do talk about is the Weave Mind asks, like, why have you come here? And Ford says, to stop Predatos, but honestly, we're not sure how we're going to handle that yet. Do you have any advice? Basically, like, what would you do? And the Weave Mind say that their goal is to set their people free and that they are vessels of Predatos' will. And the Mighty Nine's like, well, hey, just so you know, I don't think Ludinus has been upfront with you guys, and you may not know the full story here. And the Weave Mind basically say that we're not worried about Ludinus. We'll deal with him afterwards. And that's basically the gist of the conversation that happens. So a couple cool things about this encounter. The Weave Mind all have these force fields around them, which are temporary HP mechanically. And if I'm understanding it correctly, I think those recharge every round, but they recharge like less and less every round. I'm not sure if that's based on the damage they took or if it's just it gets weaker as time goes on. Also, the 5 of them share damage to some extent. So hitting one doesn't hurt that one as much, but it does a little bit to all of them. So a couple big moments here. Like I mentioned, they're invisible. So one of the first things that happens is Jester uses her divine intervention to call the Traveler via Sprinkle to make them all visible. So there's this like fun moment where I think Matt describes like raining dicks down upon them or something that makes them visible, which is huge because mechanically, I think Ford was the only one that could see them, maybe a couple other. So that happens, and then the next big power play here is we get Caleb casting Time Stop, which effectively gives him 5 rounds to do whatever he wants. There are some caveats to that, like if you deal damage, I think that ends it. But he's got 5 spells, basically 5 actions that he can choose. So he casts Mirror Image, then Fire Shield, then uses telekinesis to try and damage that glass archway I spoke of earlier, and isn't able to destroy it, but is able to like make it crack a little bit. And then for his final 2 spells, he first casts a delayed fireball and then an actual fireball. So when time catches up to reality, he's basically hitting 3 members of the Weave Mind with 2 simultaneous fireballs. Really cool. So combat, is continuing normal as you would expect. And some of the cool abilities that we see that Matt has baked into this encounter is those crystals that Blake and I talked about being around the map are actually like part of the layer actions and part of how the Weave Mind operate, and they do a bunch of different things. So one of the layer actions was if you were close to one of these crystals, it would deal psychic damage to you and slow you down. We also know that it is the crystals that are like empowering the Weave Mind themselves, and that if the Mighty Nine destroy these crystals, it effectively weakens them. So that quickly becomes the strategy in the battle, where they're hitting the crystals, and every time they do, the Weave Mind get like furious, and that leads us to Caduceus's divine intervention, where he asks the Wild Mother to basically make these crystals vulnerable, to turn them purple, and just make them really weak, essentially, until his next turn. So the Mighty Nine then uses their turns to do basically as much damage as they can to those crystals and end up destroying a bunch of them. At one point, Caduceus is knocked out, but he has Death Ward up, so he pops immediately back up. I don't think anybody else went fully down other than that, but you might have to remind me if they did. But just like we saw in the Vox Machina fight, one of the mechanics at play here was dampened divinity. So any healing that went out was basically reduced in its effectiveness by half. So fight continues, pitter patter of AC and doing damage here and there as they can, until Yasha ultimately gets the first killing blow on one of the Weave Mind. And then, of course, the rest of them just absolutely freak out by that. Um, a little bit more combat until ultimately there's this awesome combination where Bo stunning strikes, and then Caleb hits that one with a ray of disintegration, and the split damage from that actually ends up taking out all of the rest of the Weave Mind. And Matt, of course, describes this really cool scene of them basically like disintegrating away, screaming as they go. And ultimately, the Mighty Nine have succeeded in their mission, and they're hoping that they did their part, and hopefully Bell's Hells can send this home. And that is effectively where the episode ends. Again, episode 116, titled The Weave Mind. And if you're looking for our full thoughts, we will link to that down below in the description. Bada boom, bada bing.
Great job, man. That was an awesome summary
Yeah,
of.
let me, if I missed anything cool from the combat, you definitely let me know. But there was just so much happening.
No, yeah, you hit all the high notes. Other than I think there was like a healing, the mass healing word that went out, and then
Yeah,
I think Caduceus had one he was thinking about doing, and then ended up maybe doing a direct heal. But yeah, I think you nailed it. Cool episode, fun fight.
yes. We were talking before this that maybe our video wouldn't be too long today, because it basically just was the fight. That was like the entire episode. But I'm not mad at it. It was, I think Matt, we've talked about this before. Matt does such a good job designing these like final boss encounters, and this was no different for me. I loved the map, and I loved the way he incorporated the terrain with the crystals and being part of the encounter. It reminded me of the Delilah fight when they first saved Laudna from Delilah with like the tree and in the nightmare realm. It reminded me of that. But yeah, I was thoroughly entertained. It was fantastic to see the Mighty Nine level 20. It's always just crazy to see stuff going down. But yeah, I thought it was a fantastic episode.
I feel like this is the kind of episode where a DM can really like cut their teeth, because you get to create totally homebrew monsters.
Yep.
Totally homebrew abilities. Like the crystals were home, the lair actions, everything was totally homebrewed. And I think anytime you get to see Matt's like full creativity on display, and the players were obviously really enjoying it too, because he was describing, I can't remember the ability names, but not like a psychic lance, but something that was like psychic damage. And they, as these things were happening, they were just like, what?
Yeah.
And then also the cool detail at the end where they didn't have any spells at all. It was all
Yeah.
like psychic
Like
features.
abilities. Yeah.
Though this did not keep the party from continuously asking, is that a spell? Because they were ready to, counter it or what have you. But, yeah, very cool. Matt did a great job building this encounter. I thought it was really, really cool and really smart.
Yeah, me too. My only regret is that we didn't get to see some of those things in action. I can't, like, I think it was one that they kept using on Bo, but like she kept rolling high enough. It was something like Puppet. And so,
Yeah, and Matt even said, like, he was like, I really want to use this.
yeah, which,
But
I'm maybe I can't infer too much, but I'm assuming it would have meant that like she turned sides
Yeah,
and like would have fought for
yeah,
them, which that could easily snowball an encounter, you know?
yeah. Putting that
Um,
on the monk with, stunning strike,
yeah,
I mean, that's pretty it'd be pretty cool for sure.
yeah.
So,
Matt,
definitely coulda gone a lot worse.
yeah, the stunning strike has been a thorn in Matt's side, so he was probably ready to put that in his own arsenal and use it against him.
I
Uh,
hate level 20 combat, man, just gets which, monks have it way early in terms of stunning strike, but, um, I hate all these status effects that are just so they are so incredibly OP because it's really hard to balance it from the enemy perspective. It's not
yeah,
fun. It's not fun if they do power word stun on you and then you're just like, "All right, I can do nothing."
yeah,
But then as the players, you also have these really, insanely powerful things, but to be fair, I think they burn through all their legendary resistances, which is,
yeah,
part of what that's for, but
yeah,
um, yeah, it was cool. Also, I enjoyed this level 20 combat more than Vox Machina. In that Vox Machina, they seemed kind of like minor deities for everything they were doing.
yeah,
Though I really enjoyed that combat too. This one, I felt it was a lot. I don't want to say more clever, but like I'm glad like divine intervention. Both the divine interventions made a ton of sense, and I
yes,
loved how they were used.
yes,
I didn't dislike it in Vox Machina, but it just felt this felt more. I can't think of the right word. Not like nerfed, but like more balanced. I guess how they used it rather than just like I do that and it has to work. So
yeah.
not really much of a gripe other than I just really liked how both were used in this
N-
combat.
No, I agree. I wrote down the same thing that I wanted to say. That I liked the first two from Vox Machina as well. I get what you're saying. I think these were more creative.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
Pike's was just a resurrection, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, they needed a
no,
way
yeah,
to bring Vex up, but like Liam's was just bring me the beacon or whatever, which
mhm,
I thought that too was like it's cool as like a with something that powerful. I just appreciate the players not trying to take I kill one of the weave mind with it,
yeah,
like so
yes. I
I
think that yeah,
appreciated the way that they went about it. Like making them all visible was insanely powerful. Like, so don't
yes,
get me wrong, but like that was a really like I don't know. It was a
yes.
nice trade-off between DM and player and how they handled those.
Yeah, I like when the player, kind of appreciates the laws of the universe a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
or like the combat that I created. So, yeah, you said it really well. I think they did a great job with it. And the other thing I was thinking of at the start of the combat, Caleb's time stop was such a cool, like
Yes.
just thematic decision with like the
Yes.
double fireball as well. Um, really, great stuff there too.
Yeah, that's another one of my notes is just getting to see Liam like just flex his skill, I guess. I don't know what to put it, but he's I feel like he's one of the most thoughtful and I guess calculated, but maybe that's not
Mhm,
the best word. But in terms of what he's doing with his actions and with his
mhm,
character, so it's always nice to just see a master at work in that way. And like you mentioned, I know you haven't seen the entirety of campaign 2, but also just I mean, this isn't a spoiler, but just very thematic as well. The time stop and the fireball, it was just really cool. So I loved
mhm.
that, and I loved the whole back and forth between Veth and Bo in these episodes where they're like kind of
Yes.
ribbing each other and making the bets and stuff. It's
I
just
can't
good to be
remember
back with these crews.
I don't remember if I said it to you or if I said it to a buddy of mine this last week. I think it was to a buddy of mine. We were talking about Mighty Nine, and I was like, "Man, I'm loving the dynamic." And I mentioned, Veth and, Bo specifically
Yeah,
of, and, the betting, the back and forth, with the gold, and then at the end where, Veth is like, "Oh, we lost Bo," and Merge is like, I'm
sucks.
literally right here." So, anyway, yeah, really fun dynamic between the party members for sure.
100%. And to side back to something I meant to touch on when you said is that I think I too liked this boss encounter better than the Vox Machina one. Not to say that that one was bad, but I this one felt more like like a boss encounter in a video game. The last one felt more like like a war encounter,
Mm,
because like there are all the
yeah.
other like big creatures showing up and like little minions, which that's great too. But I love just like the thought that goes into like, okay, we got to destroy the crystals now, and they share damage. So how are we gonna do this? It just felt like more like a puzzle to solve
Hmm.
instead of
Hmm.
just tank and spank.
Yeah, that's true.
I
I will
appreciate it.
say that I, on the flip side, to be a little bit of a devil's advocate,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
thematically, it's thematically, it, it's hard for me to get like super invested in level 20 combat
true. Yeah.
because it's just hard to make it really that compelling, I
Yeah.
guess. It's just the spells are so powerful and the rounds are so long and not actually I didn't feel bored at all. I just never really felt that
Like tension that.
yeah, I guess tension's the right word because
Yeah.
I was having fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. But there's that missing piece of tension from a really good D&D encounter. And it
Mm,
feels like the higher level you get, it just gets, when you're like, and now on the flip side, when you're level 2 and the goblin hits you and
yeah.
you're like, wow, that was 90% of my health in
Yeah.
one swing, it's swings a little bit too far the other way, I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
Um, so this isn't really a gripe towards Critical Role so much as it is. It does, and you guys in who are listening, who you run your own campaigns and you play in D&D. I'd be really curious to hear how you keep combat compelling, where it's also not annoying for the players. Because you can throw out counter spells left and right, and in some ways, I was a little surprised that Caleb's time stop didn't get counterspelled. Then learning that they don't have spells,
Yeah.
but it's also nice to be a level 20 character and have your person at your table who wants to do something cool like that and being like, all right, yeah, you do it.
Yeah.
Like instead of just being like, oh, counterspell, counterspell, counterspell. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it other than just on the other side of it. I'm like, man, I'd love that tension, though I think we're going to get that with the Ludinous fight.
Yeah. Agreed. No, I completely agree. I've never played or run a level 20 combat, so I can't personally speak to it, but I can see that. Like it just seems like almost impossible to make, unless we're just talking about like an absolutely ridiculous setup where you've got like another D&D party fighting against a D&D party essentially, because like how
Yeah.
do you balance it in a satisfying way where it's not just like a monotonous like resource drain. So I yeah, that, because I mean Caduceus went down that one time. He had Death Ward, and I don't think anybody went down. And same in the Vox Machina fight, really. Yeah, Vex died that one time, but it really wasn't a question of if they were going to get her back up or not.
Yeah, and I think to Matt's credit, the ability that took Vex down, I think you need stuff like that
Oh yeah,
to,
100%, right?
you know what I'm saying? Like, which, how I feel about Reddit, man, but people crying about that ability, and I'm like, come on, you got to have something. But
Yeah, no, 100%. If not for that ability, then there would have been no fear in that entire encounter, really.
yeah, right.
Um, so yeah, I don't envy trying to make a level 27-person D&D party encounter, especially one that's like meant to be the climax.
Mhm.
Um, but again, that I already started this episode talking about how cool I thought that Bouse encounter was. So, I'm not no shade toward Matt or anything, but I'm totally with you in that like
Yeah,
it didn't really feel like the stakes were there in terms of like I had no
right.
nervousness about them succeeding.
Yeah.
But I also agree with you that I think that will be there for Bell's House, because I mean, what, they're level 14,
I think they're 15,
15?
I
Yeah.
think.
I think one way to solve that, which I understand why they didn't, because, and not that they care what like the internet says, but can you imagine if they had like de-leveled Vox Machina or Mighty Nine just to like make these encounters more interesting? People would have like
Yeah,
freaked out.
yeah,
But I think
yeah.
that I mean, other than that, I don't know how you make compelling level
I will
20 stuff.
say one thing that I think Matt did a really good job on this topic is was it the lair action? I can't remember that remove spell slots.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was really
That was
cool.
that's a really creative way to handle
Yeah.
that because you look at like a wizard's spell list or spell slots They have like 16 total or something. I mean,
Yes.
it's a lot for level 20.
Yeah.
So I love that that happened. And then for all we know, also, the dice went in their favor. I mean, if that puppet goes off on
Yeah.
Marisha
Yeah.
as the monk,
100%.
I mean, it could have been totally different as well. Um,
Right, yeah, because it's a knife's edge, right? Because you tip a little too far, and it's like you just kill all your players, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
oops. So yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to shout that out during the recap, but I forgot. I think it was like you roll a 1d4, and whatever
hmm
that hit, you had to remove those spell slots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Right.
I really liked that idea. Um,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah. And
cool.
I'd say, it's a good for those of you guys who are a little bit greener as a DM. It's okay to make some new stuff and try some new abilities and create some new stuff. And, especially if you have people at your table who are extremely savvy in like the monster manual or what have you, and they know every stat block that for every monster that pops up. There's nothing more satisfying than popping out, you know, a goblin casts a spell and they're like, goblins don't cast spells. You're like, this one does, So anyway, but um, I think you're muted actually.
You are correct.
You look correct, sir.
You are correct, my friend.
We didn't get to do our recap together for our last one.
That's right.
I had a couple of questions for you,
Yeah.
or just comments about what's coming next. If you're
Yeah.
okay with leaving Mighty Nine, I didn't know if you
Yeah.
had any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, like I mentioned after the recap, I feel like there's not too much to talk about here other than the encounter itself. I do feel like, and we talked about this at the end of Vox Machina. Matt mentioned that we might return to these characters in like a kind of post-campaign vignette scenario. But I'm curious if we might see Mighty Nine again, because there was all that talk of like, call us if you need us type of thing. But I think that makes sense in world to have that moment, but I don't know how much sense it makes from a meta perspective for like
hmm
Bell's Hells to tag in Mighty Nine to help them with lewdness.
Yeah, I think
But anyway,
it'd be too clunky. I
yeah.
think, you know, um, managing all those people in combat. But I will say it it does make me think this campaign might be done in the next 2 or 3 episodes. And specifically, the one thing I wanted to ask you about with the Ludinus fight that's looming,
Yeah.
theme of the campaign, uh, this power mismatch
Yeah.
in that we have the level 15 characters, we have Ludinus freaking Deleth, level 20, 1,000 years old, has absorbed these massive fey creatures, presumably other exaltants, and
Yeah.
now most recently Liliana, an incredibly a powerful spellcaster.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what? What does this combat even look like? I can't even
Yeah.
imagine this group of party members defeating Ludinus. Like, I'm so curious how this is going to play out.
Yeah. And a lewdness that like might like Predathos might be in the encounter as well to some extent. Like maybe as like layer actions, or maybe he's like gonna empower lewdness. But yeah, I don't know. I trust in Matt to build a really cool encounter, just like he has with this Weave Mind one and the other ones we've talked about. But I think it will be one of those fights where like kind of similar to the crystals. There's going to be like objectives that happen during the fight that will like weaken him and make him fallible, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like because we know that the weakness in the neck, like I'm sure that will play some sort of role. I do imagine that some of the deities will lend a hand in some form or fashion. We know that there's the Raven Queen mask, which is basically like a
Mhm.
Deus Ex Machina kind of like
Mhm.
so I just imagine Matt has baked in like cool things like that will level the playing field. But otherwise, you're right. I mean, I would guess that of the 3 final boss fights we've seen, the Ludinus one makes sense to be the strongest, and it's the weakest party that's going up against him. So yeah, I mean, hopefully they get some help, but yeah,
Mhm.
maybe we'll get that tension we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it also seems like the Ruidian army. I'm like, you guys had however many years to plan this, and you guys got punched down pretty quick.
Yeah.
It seems like Ludinus is totally disinterested, even with that whole force, and is just like solo focused on freeing Predathos.
Yeah.
So I do wonder. Yeah, I think like you said, there is likely some element of Predathos that will be in the encounter. Um, and I almost wonder if like they don't get the killing blow. Like maybe they lose. And it's not a TPK, but they lose. And then, it's your classic summoning Jiraxis of,
Mm.
he frees Predathos, but since he's not Rudis born, Predathos
Yeah.
eviscerates him or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then they have to fight like a weakened Predathos. I don't know what it would be, but a lot of options for sure. But
Yeah. I'm having a lot of thoughts right now, so I'm trying not to lose them really quick. First, let me just it's a slight aside, but you reminded me of it because we didn't get to sit down and talk for the last episode. One thing I did want to talk about was Liliana getting absorbed. First of all, that sucks, and it does feel like a nice. I don't want to say. I don't think this was punitive. I don't think it was punitive of Matt, but it was nice to see like there was a consequence to Imogen being
Mhm,
like, nope, nope, make sure he doesn't put out the movie, right? Like,
mhm,
and I'm not saying that if she hadn't have done that, Liliana wouldn't have died, but it certainly makes sense if, Ludinus is like, hey, why are you,
mhm.
why do you want to cancel this movie so bad? Like, that might have been what caused him to ultimately make that decision. But something you just said made me think, well, with Liliana gone, obviously we have Imogen still as a potential vessel, but like who is Ludinus planning on using as the vessel now with Liliana gone? And could absorbing Liliana have made him a potential vessel? Probably not, but I wonder.
I think it's less mechanically is he now Rudis born, and more it just speaks to the really nice character creation that Matt's done with this particular villain of being so extroverted about doing what's best for Exandria and like, yeah, I'll be your villain and yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, it's ego. And he is sort of the last vestige of the Age of Arcanum, which thematically is powerful spellcasters that are, dripping with that ego.
Yeah.
So I think he has been absorbing multiple exaltants,
Yeah.
believing that,
Yeah.
very much manifesting it in the sense of like, yeah, like I think I'm probably good now, right?
Yeah,
So
that makes sense because we know that they've been disappearing, right? Like, so either he's been absorbing them or he's been like dashing them against the
yeah,
prison cage for some
yeah,
reason. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I kind of hope he wins. Like that's not to say that I hope Bell's Hells get TPK'd, but I think it
yeah.
would be cool if he was successful in his mission and then just to see what would happen there. Very much like a I always pronounce this two different ways. Osmandius or Ozymandias? I don't know which one it is.
Uh, Osmandius,
Osmandius.
which I think I always thought it was Ozymandias, but I think you're right.
I don't know. Y'all let us know in the comments, but I think that would be like a cool moment. Like he's been a compelling villain thus far, and thus far there hasn't been. And Matt may do this, and I'm not saying it would be bad if he did, but there hasn't been like the dark twist where like it's really all been for this reason. Like he has like some compelling reasons for what he's doing. So I think it would be cool
Mhm.
if he got to succeed. Um, and
We've had
then
some pretty consistent themes in our podcast for this campaign, and I
yeah,
think one of them has been like, yeah, I'm okay if Ludinus wins. I'm okay if Predathos gets out. Let's
I
see
just
what
want to see
happens.
what happens.
Yeah, let's
And I
push
mean,
the
I
button.
guess we don't. Bell's House still hasn't made a decision, but even if Ludinus loses, they just may let him out, right? Like that would
Hmm.
be interesting.
Hmm.
Then if they'll go the vessel route, and I mean, we don't have to go over these options because we've talked about them at length, but
Yeah.
it's crazy that it literally going to be a in the moment decision. It looks like.
Hmm.
I wonder how much
It's
they're
dope.
talking about it, like in their group text.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'm assuming they've finished the campaign too. So
Oh,
it's probably even hard not to talk about
I
it
didn't even think
with,
about that.
you know. So
Yeah. I mean, certainly possible at this point, especially with like the holidays. Like maybe they already
yeah.
got everything wrapped up, or because of the holidays, they haven't finished yet, and they're like, I guess it all depends on how many episodes we have left. You know,
I'm really nervous that the finale is going to be
your
the
D&D
19th.
night.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's my last D&D night of the year.
When is it? Is that next week?
Yeah, next Thursday. Because it was the only night people could do. And I was like, just want everyone to know if this is happening, I'm out.
Well,
So,
at the bare minimum, there's two. Like, there's no way there's less than two episodes left because
right,
we would need at
right.
least one climax and then at least one like
Mm-hmm,
conclusion, if you will. But
mm-hmm,
especially considering the way that Matt said he might want to touch in with the other teams. Not that I mean you could handle that in one episode, just jump between all three. But
mm-hmm.
I feel personally like we're rocking with maybe 5 episodes, give or take.
I'd be okay with that.
And I mean, again, not to retread conversations we've done a million times, but is there at least a possibility where like stuff goes sideways and there's a bit more to the campaign about like dealing with the fallout? Um like what
I
if
think, yeah.
Predatos does escape and like what is Asmodeus been planning? Or are these things that we would maybe address in a hypothetical campaign for?
Right.
So
I
I
think
don't
that is a
know.
possibility for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Did the actually I just remembered this earlier today, but I haven't like checked on it. Did they just had their live show or is that about to happen? They did
no,
just
they
have
have it
it.
on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah,
I, d- I
the
w-
Daggerheart live
I
show.
wonder if anyone in our Discord went. Curious
I
how it
want to
went.
go to the April one in Chicago, but they already sold out all the tickets though.
That's
So it would have
crazy.
to be it'd have to be secondhand.
Yeah.
But people in my D&D group are going.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was like, well, dang,
That's fun.
if two couples in my D&D group are going, I feel like that's a sign I should really go, but I probably won't. But
What
anyway,
which one is it again?
that's
Which
the
show?
Chicago one.
Do you know like what's happening though with that show?
I yes, let me pull this bad boy up. Let's
It's not the
see.
wedding, it's not the Australian campaign crossover. I can't remember what the other ones were.
This might be like the one that was like pick your,
Oh,
like they're gonna
the
pick
choose your
their,
adventure where we're gonna have like a
yeah.
mishmash of campaign characters. I think
Yeah. The audience will vote to decide which of the original main cast members will choose and play for the evening.
that's
So
fun.
yeah.
Curious what Matt will do for that. If he'll like if it'll be kind of like outside the canon or if he'll come up with some reason that
Mm-hmm.
presumably these random characters are together.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hmm. Yeah, that would be fun. Let me know if that materializes further
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
Yeah. I'm I'm sure I won't, but I'd love to go to the Sydney one. It'd be really cool.
Yeah.
The Melbourne one or Sydney. I think it's two
I think it's
it's a
both.
two
It's both.
shot. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
two shot across both nights, I think,
Yeah, in both
or
cities too.
yeah.
I don't think it's
Anyway.
I don't think it's back-to-back nights. I think it's like
Yeah,
at least
right.
maybe not a full week apart, but something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for me. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Um, I don't think so. I don't think so. Like I said, Whoa, I just zoomed our screen, so that probably made the podcast look weird for a second. Lost my train of thought, but no, that's all from me. I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
All
we
right.
appreciate we appreciate we appreciate you guys. Goodbye. Just cut it there.
Just we'll do it live.
Yep.
Oh. Well. Never mind.
Oh, I do want to show
It's funny that you just did the exact same thing.
yeah, I do want to show people. I mentioned it to you. I'll mention it in the Discord too, and probably the live stream on Friday. But this old box of Doom that I was gifted for
That's
my
so cool.
birthday.
I didn't even know that was a thing, but now I want one.
I didn't either, so it's very cool. Really exciting. So yeah. Oh, I guess that's it.
Beautiful. Do you remember what you rolled?
Like a 19 or something.
It's a good start.
So it was a good start.
It's a
It's a
good
good
start.
sign. It's a good
Also,
sign.
I
I think
just
you're gonna be.
realized. Oh, never mind.
Go ahead.
Never mind.
Oh,
I'm dumb.
okay. All right.
That's all I got.
All right. We're ending it for real this time.
All righty. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in.